Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was released over 2 years ago at this point, but the conversation surrounding it, and more notably its DLC, continues strongly even today. One of my main criticisms of the Smash speculation scene is the seeming inability to come up with a general consensus on what does and doesn't disqualify a character from Smash. People are prone to seeing patterns and then declaring them as rules that everyone must adhere to in their speculation, but in reality, it's a lot more nuanced than that. Today, I'm going to go through and talk about my thoughts and criticisms of the current state of Super Smash Bros. Speculation, but I'm also going to close off the video by revealing the 4 rules that we know make or break a character's chances for Smash. Let's get into it. Fan rule is a term thrown around by many people within the Smash community, generally being used as a word to describe patterns that continue on through character reveals. One of the most notable examples being that of assist trophies that have yet to be upgraded as playable fighters within the same game. Now, I've made my position a little murky on this before, but I want to clarify it here. I think that fan rules can be a very healthy and productive thing when harnessed correctly. Smash speculation is kind of like a giant thunderstorm with loud ideas and theories being thrown everywhere to the point that it's really overwhelming and hard to see where lightning's gonna strike. That's where rules come into play. The established rules given to us by Nintendo and Masahiro Sakurai, the director of Super Smash Bros., gives us a foundation that we can use to start sifting through all the noise, but when we combine that with our own observations and theories, we can start to build our own metaphorical lightning rods, potentially increasing our chances of accurately predicting DLC. I think that this is the most useful and productive way of dealing with fan rules and patterns. By looking at the hard rules given to us as an established outline, we could refine our predictions and increase our accuracy. Unfortunately though, more often than not, this is not how fan rules are used in the community. Rather, they turn into a few people with a loud voice picking up on some patterns or statements that, more oftentimes than not, don't have a lot of weight to them, and then repeating their own ideas so often and so prominently that people who have yet to solidly establish their own foundation begin to pick up on these false ones as fact, rather than taking them as what they're best used for, a guideline. And this sort of repetition within the Smash community creates an echo chamber that's full of disinformation and nurtures an almost religious following behind the methodologies of predicting Smash fighters. Everything starts from a single source that gives some sort of vague information. In this case, it's either Sakurai or Nintendo. After that, thousands of people begin to put their own spin and interpretations on this original source, creating communities of like-minded people who don't want to hear anything but that same ideology repeated over and over and over again, creating a division of the people who agree and have the correct opinion versus everyone who doesn't agree with them. All of this toxicity and infighting takes place and develops to the point that people lose sight of what the original source said and become overly focused on red herrings and things that are entirely unrelated to the truth. When this fanaticism is applied to fan-created rules within speculation, it leads to an outcome that isn't good for anyone. It makes dissenters feel invalidated or delusional, and ultimately can come to them feeling disenfranchised from the scene. But on the other side, it also leaves the people who are spouting out all of this unconfirmed information in a place of believing their position is accurate, when in fact it's based on shaky foundations that no one's ever been able to meaningfully question or challenge due to the sheer size of this argument. This kind of echo chamber is why we have characters like Geno from Super Mario RPG commonly speculated. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Geno as much as the next guy. I think he's super cool and I'd have zero issue with him at all getting into the game. But while dedicated fans of Geno exist out there, a vast plurality of people who speculated about him heard about him from other speculators, including me. Despite his origins from a niche game, he became a household name among Smash speculators due almost entirely to the overwhelming amount of repetition within the community. Fans became convinced that he was way more likely than he actually was because they heard his name over and over and over again. Once again, I don't want to rag on Geno or anything here, but I think that the principle behind this is something that can be seen throughout much of Smash speculation, especially with fan-created rules that seem much more likely than they actually are. And we see a similar kind of blind fanaticism when people find a character that they like and then cherry pick evidence to make their pick seem more likely while ignoring all of the contradicting info. For example, Among Us is a franchise whose popularity is just too new to logistically be a viable candidate for this DLC wave, but there are many dedicated fans of Among Us out there who express that they want the imposter in Smash, which is totally fine. I think it's cool to express that you want a new character. But I have also seen people claiming that he is one of the most likely characters, and they attack people who disagree, which from what I can tell seems like it must come from an uninformed uninformed area or a very intentional misreading of evidence to match a pre-established conclusion. And that's something that we can see with tons and tons of different characters in Smash, with so many people being convinced that their favorite character is suddenly the most likely pick for Super Smash Bros. And like I said, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting characters who might not be the most likely pick. For example, I think that Zagreus from Hades would be spectacular in Smash, even if I know he's not coming. But the issue comes when you toxically enforce the unfounded belief on other people before it's able to be substantiated and proved to be reliable. There's also a disproportionate amount of trust and weight put into people who have any sort of involvement in the gaming industry, even if those people seemingly wouldn't be connected to Smash Bros. DLC. For example, a few days before Steve was announced, I put out a final analysis on his chances of getting into Smash, which, by the way, was like the best timing I ever could have asked for on my channel. And one of the biggest reasons that people brought up for why he couldn't be in Smash were a few statements made by a community manager at Mojang saying in relation to Smash, Steve is just an empty shell of an avatar that goes away when you use a skin, despite her later saying that it was just her opinion and not an official statement. This tweet got thrown around so freaking much, and people disregarded her statement saying it wasn't an official announcement as her just covering up, which is a sentiment I see all over the internet when people find something that doesn't work with their pre-established idea of a character's likeliness. Even after I went to Mojang's hiring page and read off word for word what her actual job description entailed, people still doubted it. And that's part of the problem here. Regardless of status or intentionality, there seems to be a sentiment within the Smash community that any statement made by anyone ever is valid to use in relation to Smash, infinitely relevant with no respect to the time that it was made, and miraculously malleable. I have seen this same exact statement from Sakurai taken and interpreted many drastically different ways, and all of them somehow seem to deviate from his original intentions or context of the statement. I've even fallen into this trap myself when I thought that the intern running the French Halo Twitter account would have some insider information to know whether or not Master Chief was coming to Smash. People take all of these statements and random interviews and then manipulate them and weaponize them to match their own desires, regardless of what other people think or what the evidence might even suggest. And you can see so many of these unsubstantiated rules pushed onto many people in the speculation scene today until it forms a dull point of inaccuracy. Some currently popular ones may include the aforementioned assist trophy rule, or that characters need to appear on a Nintendo console in order to be eligible. Both of these could hold up, but we just don't have the evidence to suggest that they do. If you want to say that Nintendo hasn't done it before and therefore they never will, then you also have to explain why there isn't a character in Smash whose name starts with the letter Q. I know it's a silly example and there could be a billion other reasons, but it runs off of the exact same logic. And when these pseudo rules mix with deliberate misinterpretations that I just mentioned, they result in nearly every argument in every speculation video sounding exactly the same, with the 10 same characters repeated into infinity, most of which are never going to make it into the game. Many of these fan rules previously disqualified characters like Joker, Steve, Min, or Sephiroth from coming to the game, only to find out that the rules were serving to make us less accurate after all, rather than more accurate. But where do all of these rules come from? And if they're so inaccurate, when applied on a large scale, why do they keep being repeated and shared as fact? It's hard to know exactly where all of these rules came from individually, but it seems like a majority of them are taken from misinterpreted statements from Sakurai himself, or statements that are taken out of context. So what does hold up? The best source that I can find for actual rules comes from a Japanese email response on Brawl's website from Super Smash Bros. Director Masahiro Sakurai. The following was translated by Push Dustin from Source Gaming. Listen closely because there are some key takeaways here for Smash speculation. Manga characters will not join the battle, obviously. While it's true that we've added characters from other companies, it's not going to be anyone and everyone. Smash is a game that's made from everyone's effort. Both companies have to want the character to join the battle. I need them to let me take charge of the character. In order to fit the characters into the world of Smash, I need them to allow me to take some artistic license. The character must carry a history with them. Besides that, it might be something like a courtesy to include a character who has a history of appearing on Nintendo platforms. This is interesting because he never outright says characters have to appear on Nintendo consoles first, but rather that it might be a courtesy or something more akin to that, which would explain why a vast majority of characters do appear on a Nintendo console, but not all of them have appeared first. It's also interesting to note that Snake has appeared on Nintendo consoles, but his design in Smash doesn't come from any of those games. And it seems like the inclusion on a Nintendo console, or even a good relationship with Nintendo as a business, is more of a nicety than a prerequisite as long as they can work together. The only firm rules that we seem to have on who can be added to Smash are: number one, it can't be a manga rep. Seemingly, they need to have some sort of standard for being meaningful to video games. There's also another quote where Sakurai specifically mentions Goku and Iron Man. I think people distort this to mean the character has to make their first appearance in a video game, which leads to some pretty silly things like people claiming that Lightning McQueen is an eligible character because Disney's Cars video game technically came out before the movie. At the same time, people say that a representative from the Witcher series is ineligible because his story originates from a book, despite it being incredibly influential within gaming. Not mentioning that we have characters like Pitt, who's the personification of the mythical Icarus, or Dracula, who also comes from folklore rather than a video game originally. Anyway, rule number 2. Both companies have to want the character to join the battle. This doesn't explicitly mean that Nintendo needs a great history or relationship with the company. Rather, it just means that both companies have to be willing to participate for one reason or another. It doesn't even need to make financial sense looking in from an outsider's perspective. I'm sure that Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, didn't have a lot to offer to Nintendo financially or in terms of his IP, but seemingly both Nintendo and Toby Fox wanted to work together, so the collaboration was done in spite of it. Or once again, it could have been a great financial deal. We can't speculate about business dealings from an outside perspective. But that leads us to number 3. The character must carry a history with them. It's hard to know exactly what this one means because it's not really quantified. It doesn't seem to me that they have to appear on a Nintendo console, as he goes on to say it's more of a courtesy than anything else. Many characters included in the game have a rich gaming history behind them, and even newer games in Smash like Minecraft have still left an incredible impact on gaming. The outlier here for me is Bayonetta. That's one I haven't quite been able to figure out yet, but it seems like for the most part they need to have some sort of gaming history behind them. And the final rule, number 4, comes from another response where Sakurai talks about the need for personality in a character. Now, I don't think that we can honestly say that this means a personality in the common sense of the word, like a sense of charisma or expression, as we can see the lack of that manifest in a huge number of the Smash cast. Instead, I think Sakurai is saying that he needs to be able to make them believable as a person or a fighter rather than an object. There's an obvious difference between Steve from Minecraft and a Tetris block. On the subject, Sakurai said, "To be blunt, if I think I can do it, then I can envision a concrete embodiment of the character. But if I cannot do that, the character can't be made. Whether the image of the character in my head is dancing powerfully or not, this is of the utmost importance." And so with this last rule, it's really hard to know what to do with it, because it seems like it's entirely based on subjectivity from Sakurai's own inspiration, which, if he's like most humans, can change from day to day. This is something that's probably impossible to totally verify because it is so subjective, but it's also really interesting to see that many of the picks that made it to the roster as DLC are from games that Sakurai personally loves. Games like Minecraft, where he showed us his creations, or Persona, where he said he maxed out every confidant relationship, or Fatal Fury, one of the first fighting games he got serious in and competed in it to the point that it made him want to develop games. Sakurai's been on record saying his own preferences don't play much of a role in the decisions for DLC choices, but I would imagine that if he loves a game, he'd be much more willing to take it on, as demonstrated by his willingness to take on the daunting task of representing Minecraft and Smash despite its difficulty. Which I want to clarify, in that direct he never said he didn't want to do Minecraft, rather he just felt intimidated by it. But anyway, moving on. Alright, hey guys, it's Ink. I'm editing this video, and as I went to get a screenshot of that last rule I talked about, I realized that there were actually 4 more rules specifically that Sakurai mentioned and I just totally overlooked. So I'm going to read through them really fast. So number 1, personality, like I just said. Number 2, the character has to have something only they can do. And I assume this means the gimmicks. Each character kind of has something like that. He wants them to feel unique. The next one is potential development issues and game balance also being taken into consideration. And to me, this reminds me of what they said about Ice Climbers not being included in the Wii U 3DS version. I don't think that it means they're difficult like Steve was, because he got included, but I think more it's trying to say that if they actually cannot be implemented in the game, then they're disqualified. And then last, he mentions distribution among the franchises also being taken into consideration. That's vague enough. We don't really know what it means, and most of us don't have any insider knowledge on distribution of games. Keep in mind, this was all made back around the time of Smash 3DS, but anyway, as you were. With all of this said and done, where does that leave us in 2021? I think if we're being honest, we're in a place where no one knows who's getting into the game, which is super exciting. We have a few guidelines given to us by Sakurai, as well as a few less reliable fan rules that can still have their time and place, but ultimately, I think that it's healthy to acknowledge that there's no real way of telling who's getting into the game. We can pull up sales numbers, past tweets, and more, but it really kind of seems hit or miss as to whether these factor in at all. Speculation in its current form for Smash is relatively meaningless, and it's more of a political powerful echo chamber than anything else where people just repeat their own ideas over and over until it gets bounced back at them. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can change it. If we as a community start shifting the purpose that we have for speculating away from get the absolute correct pick and qualify any character or speculators that we don't see as worthy into a more refined purpose of find characters who are interesting and feasibly fit within these established guidelines by Sakurai in order to drive a better conversation, I think that it would make the scene a lot more welcoming and fun to be a part of. There likely wouldn't even be a drop off in accuracy, since as a community, we've honestly accurately predicted very little as a general consensus. I don't know where Smash speculation is going to take us in 2021 or what's going to get revealed, but the fact that I have zero idea is incredibly exciting, surprising, and mysterious. I, for one, am incredibly excited to see where lightning's going to strike next, and I'm going to have to hold out hope that it's going to hit Impa from Legend of Zelda to get into Smash. Oh, crap.